Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Knitted Art History, where I'm sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. And as you can see by the name of the video, we're going to be talking about our traditional Ukrainian Easter eggs. So apparently I'm sorry for my language, I fucked up a bit. So I don't know why, but I was sure that this year we have like Catholics and Orthodox, they have the same date for Easter, but apparently Catholics already celebrated it. But for Orthodox we have as if though I'm not baptized in Catholicism, but okay, we have Easter in like this Sunday. So I decided that it will be appropriate to make this because it's a very big tradition in Ukraine, just overall in Slavic cultures. And another thing also is that I actually saw a lot of videos on TikTok of people doing PYSANKA. I will explain you what is that in a video. And and I started to like look at their pages, and turns out that those are people, like those are not Ukrainians. There's are foreigners who were doing this like our traditional stuff, and I was like very interested in that, and I thought that it would be appropriate to for this week's week to tell you about what is this, how it started, how it's done, who's doing that, and all of that. So without further ado, because I believe this video will be quite a long one, because I have like quite a lot, I really tried to narrow it down as much as possible, but there's so many interesting stuff. So without further ado, and also today I also won't be knitting anything because I don't have anything. I haven't started anything. I have not been knitting for a while already. So let's move on and let's dive into our video today. So overall, the egg, has long occupied a very important this religious ritual and symbolic place in almost all of the nations, almost all of the mythologies that we know of, right? Because basically in biggest part of cultures, the egg is seen as a symbol of a sun, right? Symbol of revival and all of this stuff. And when you're eating this egg, it's like also it's the spring revival, and well, etc., etc. This painted eggs were also given on New Year's in a lot of cultures. So this is not like something super local for Slavic people, but it just it just flourished more in our part of the world. There were also such traditions that eggs were buried in those places where the city was supposed to be built. So it is believed that this is exactly how Naples is built. It is also known that ancient Romans, that they actually had also such thing as painted eggs, and they used them for various celebrations. So and there are a lot of references in about that, a lot of mentionings about that in the works of a lot of ancient historians, such as Pliny, such as Ovid, also a writer, and etc., etc. Also, interestingly, there is such a researcher, his name is Cornelius Brun, and he visited Persia in 1704, and in his memoirs that he wrote about his travel, he wrote that there were also such a tradition of giving painted eggs to each other on New Year, and this New Year was on 20th of May. In general, before, like pretty not so long ago, area of distribution of these painted eggs were pretty wide, but for some reasons this area with years started to narrow down, and well, it led to the point that at this point now, starting from like 19th century, the most like the area where these painted eggs are the most popular is like our part of Europe, like Eastern Europe, Balkans, Baltics, also because all of us have these traditions, not just us Ukrainians, but Poland also, like Romanians, Lithuanians, Greeks also have this culture still. And this tradition lives mainly in our part of the world. However, if we will get into Ukraine, like how all of this started in Ukraine, it is, at this point already, it is completely forgot. So there is somewhere, in some very remote villages, there is some kind of very, very old grandmas and grandpas, well, mostly grandmas, who still remember this tradition and how it started, but mostly we don't really know why it got so widespread on our territories, on by our, I mean, Eastern Europeans, on our Ukrainian territories also, because it's a very big thing in Ukraine. And so yeah, so it is kind of, unfortunately, it's kind of unknown at this point. However, in different regions, we have a lot of different religious legends, religious stories, how all of this started and where all of this Easter eggs, painted eggs, comes from. Obviously, as I said, different regions have different versions of this, and I picked up just like few of them, the most distinctive, that are, you know, on most of the territories, on most of the regions. So, for example, the most like widespread legend in Western regions is following. So when Judas, he betrayed Christ, he came back to his mother's house, and he told everything what he's done, and his mom, she presented him some boiled eggs, and she started to, like, you know, bash at him and tell him that, well, Jesus eventually will would rise again, would revive. Judas laughed at her face and said, like, well, Jesus will rise the same way as, I don't know, chickens will be born from these already boiled, prepared eggs. And the moment he said these words, the eggshells started to crack, and from these already hard-boiled eggs, the chicks grew up. And Judas got so scared and so terrified of this that he hanged himself. So this is like one of the most widespread legends that is told. Another version is pretty similar, but the same words were said by one of the executioners of Christ. He said, you know, after the execution of Christ, after they killed him, he said the same thing. He started to prepare his eggs, and also said that, well, Jesus will rise the same way as chicks will grew up, will be born from this already prepared eggs. And this is again what happened. And yeah, and this is also, it is also pretty popular in mostly in Western regions, but also this this particular one is also popular in Kharkiv region, which is the eastern part of eastern part of Ukraine. The third version is that Virgin Mary, she was painting late at night, without light, without anything. She was painting these eggs to bring them to Pilate as a ransom for her son. And when she finished in the morning, she was already going to Pilate to present these eggs. And unfortunately, while she was still going there, she found out that Christ were already executed. And because of that, obviously, from sorrow and grief, she fell on the floor. She started to cry, and she obviously, this basket with this eggs fell down also, and these eggs scattered around the world. There is also some local, very local. So, for example, in Kharkiv region, there is such a village as Tarasivka, and there they have another legend. So it sounds like that Mary Magdalene, she came to the tomb of Christ. Obviously, she didn't saw him there, and the angel told her that, well, Christ has risen. And Mary, very happy because of that, she ran to her home, and when she came home, she saw that the basket with the eggs these eggs in this basket, they're already painted. And because of that, also, she became even more happy, and she started to go around and tell everyone that, well, Christ arose. And she was giving all of these eggs to everyone that she was seeing, that she was meeting on the streets. So legends also like that. Another also interesting stuff is that another legend also is that when Christ was going to execution and he was carrying his cross, a man passed by with a basket of eggs for selling them. And he saw the Christ, and he saw how hard it was for him, and he got very not pity, what words to use. So he decided to help. Basically, he put this basket with the egg near the road, so he hid it somewhere, and so he got with Christ to the place of execution with this cross. And when Christ were executed, this man remembered that, oh, I have a basket with an egg, with eggs hidden. He came back, he found this basket, and he saw that all of these eggs were painted. And he got so also excited and so surprised about that he decided, no, he will return home, and he would take these eggs as a reminder, something like that. And it also pretty popular in a lot of Western regions, and also in Poltava region. This particular legend is popular. There is also another thing, as there's two explanations that survived in Kuban region. So Kuban region, it's ethnically Ukrainian territory. You will still meet there a lot of people with Ukrainian last name. You will still meet a lot of people who are speaking half Ukrainian. The dialect there is like with half Ukrainian words. So there in this Kuban region, they have two sayings. That the first one, that eggs were dyed red because well, Christ bled, and it is believed that when he was poked, how to say it, in his rib cage, he this blood that was dropping out of him when he was hitting the ground, it was turning into some eggs. The second explanation is that when the John the Baptist was like beheaded, this head was brought to Herod, and when he saw this hat, he became this all red with shame and pity for what he has done. And this is also why it is believed that eggs are mainly painted in red. In Poland, for example, in where also a local region such as Sedlec region, they have this also belief that legend that all of the stones that were thrown at Saint Stephen after his death turned into some Easter eggs, and it is in memory of this event that Easter eggs are still made to this day. Well, in this particular region at least. So as I said at the beginning, like in general, almost no one remembers how all of these traditions started. Well, particularly in Ukraine. The only accurate conclusion can be made that this tradition came to Ukraine after, like, came with Christianity, and well, by our in our history, the Christianity, the Kievan Rus was baptized, as we call it, in the year 988, so it's like 10th century, and is somewhere in this period of time. Also, archaeologists are actually finding some of the ceramic eggs. Which are dates like somewhere near this like 10th 11th century. It is a very known like tradition starting from a very old period of time. In the 20s and 30s of 20th century, that was a period of time when Soviets had this atheistic, anti-religious propaganda, and Easter eggs were classified as harmful cult attributes, and those who were making them, they deserved scorn, ridicule, and at some point even punishment. So again, amazing Soviet Union, like your favorite, what like you in the West adore, a lot of you and a lot of actually young people. Soviet Union, yay! When you can have anything, when you can have your own mind, you can do whatever you want, you can have your own tradition, anything. Literally, imagine being killed because you painted a fucking egg. My ancestors of all of my friends, families and everything, they did not they didn't have to imagine this, because that was the reality. You could have been fucking killed because of a fucking egg. Sorry for my language. Soviet Union, amazing Soviet Union. But okay, moving on, because you know that I am so I hate this topic so much that I can like rumble about this forever. The production after that, the production of Eastern eggs, the painting of this tradition got, well, obviously people were doing this because you always have, you know, in some villages, local villages, somewhere underground, obviously things were going on. But overall, technically, this tradition after 2030s completely, well, again, went down. So we don't have, it stopped first in central and then in eastern regions, and then when Soviets got to western regions, it stopped in western regions also. The exceptions were a very, you know, this remote villages in Carpathian mountains. In the 30s, 50s of the 20th century, so this is the period of time, so what, this is 20 years, that we don't really have any recollection and don't really have any mentions whether like of Easter eggs making, which again, obviously some families might have done it in the night very carefully so no one will see that, but technically it was it was not done. In the 60s of 20th century, in connection with the increased interest in the folk art, but there was still, I don't think that it was a very good period of time. We have 60s, it was a lot of artists, poets, literature critiques and everything were killed, were executed, a lot of stuff, a lot of things. However, you know, it was like getting bit by bit. Finally, people like us Ukrainians particularly, we started to, you know, raise our heads and being like, well, what the hell? You know, we want our traditions back, and we will have them. So yeah, so in the 60s it started to revive bit by bit. At this point, pysankarstvo, so this making of these pysankas, it did not get beyond Carpathian Mountains and Prekarpattia, so it's like means the territory near Carpathian Mountains, and it was reviving very slowly in other parts of Ukraine. In the 70s, Easter eggs as work of folk art were already exhibited at exhibitions. Some private collection of this Easter eggs started to appear. The manufacture of Easter eggs from wood that was known in 18th, 19th centuries also started to, has resumed. In the 80s, professional artists, folk artists, they started to work in this field even more actively. And well, during the independence, when we finally gained independence in 1991, after that this field started to rise even more, and now it's, you know, it's a common tradition, and we fortunately survived, and fortunately we know all of this, and we have a lot of classes going on, exhibitions. Also, we have whole museums dedicated to pysankas and krashenkas, so these Easter eggs and everything. So we're able to preserve this tradition till this point, and we know all of that now. So about the name. So we, like in Ukraine, commonly we use two names. The first one is already mentioned, pysanka, and second is krashenka. So pysanka is basically an egg that is painted, but is also painted with an ornament. Ornament is made in 2 or 3 colors. This is well, now obviously everything is a bit more way more colorful, but traditionally it was made in 2-3 colors, not more. And it was less common to see an egg painted in only one color on just a white background of the egg. And krashenka, those are, well, this is just an egg just painted in one color, so without any ornamentation. And obviously different, well, this is like mainly we use it all over, like through Ukraine in all regions, but obviously in some of the regions there is some other names considering the dialect. So for example, in in some of the districts of Lviv region, for example, they are calling, like, pysanka and krashenka is completely the same thing. This is a egg that with ornamentation, and an egg without an ornamentation that we commonly call krashenka, they call it slivka. So other also think in other districts of the named Lviv region, they also called krashenka halunka. So, you know, so throughout Ukraine, there is different interesting names, but the common one is pysanka and krashenka. So remember this one, pysanka and krashenka. So overall, you see this tradition of creating pysankas, like right now it's reviving again, because a lot of people, again, they want to create pysanka, specifically their own pysankas, not just krashenka, because it's boring, you know. But overall, till this period of time, you know, it was, well, apart that it was not allowed to create, as I said, this Easter eggs, but overall just this tradition started to die because not a lot of people had a lot of time to create them, because it required time to make a pysanka, and I mean in a traditional way, and well, people have, you know, home chores, so so there's not a lot of time. And in some villages even, for example, there were some, you know, one grandma, very old grandma left, that knew how traditionally to do all of that. And if she was dying, that whole tradition was dying with her. And unfortunately, this is what happened in some of the villages in some of the regions. And because of that, you see, when this happened in some of the regions, so people were obligated to bring these eggs to some other villages, you know, for other craftswomen to paint them. And this was, well, that was at some point pretty expensive, actually, thing. So it's just the rich people that were the only one who were allowed to do that, not allowed, who were able to do that, to use the force of someone else. So yeah, so this was also kind of a reason why this pysankas started to decline. Krashenkas, they were always, because you don't need a lot of, you know, a lot of stuff, a lot of talent to create krashenka. Just put an egg into a colored water and you have a krashenka. So it is said, like, in all this, like, and I mean like all this at the end of like 19th century, this works by researchers, that if you are in a village and in this village they are only exchanging with krashenkas, that means that the last craftswoman that knew how to create pysankas has died and there is no one there to revive this tradition. Also, we'll mention that this is such a thing as dryapanka. So it is from the word scratching. So basically it was a painted egg, but the ornament were not painted, the ornament were scratched. So we are doing this in Ukraine, but this is mostly a Polish stuff. Poles, they are the one who are doing this the most. And now about who were doing this pysankas. So it is, so that was like a privilege mostly of a young girls. So it was mostly the young girls who was doing this. Rarely it was married young women who were doing this. It was like, you know, a memory of this happy and married times, as we can say. And even more rarely, it was, not rarely, more rare, how it's grammatically correct, you understood. It was that young boys were doing that. And it is, for example, known that the boys were engaged in this in one village in Lviv region in Ravsky district. So it is known, but it is very, very like super rare. Old women will also paint in eggs in fairly local areas where young girls did not have such skills, and therefore, as I already mentioned, these traditions were dying with these old women. And in some, well, mostly, as I said, mostly in most of the region, it was the thing, privilege of young girls, but there were regions, like Kharkiv region, for example, they were mainly doing it, mainly the old women were doing this there. And obviously, like in one village, the village, there were a few girls that were painting all of that, and obviously among them, they were the best one. And again, obviously, the villagers, they wanted to get to this girl, so she would create the most beautiful eggs for them. And so they were customizing these eggs, and the girls, they were not taking, they were not paid by, I mean, in terms of money. They were like exchanging some goods, you know, some eggs also among themselves. So it was like this. So they were kind of paid, but it was not like money paid. Also important stuff was that when you were customizing these eggs, you were obviously taking these eggs, like taking your own eggs, and you also needed to bring your own materials for the girl to paint. But the situation was completely different in villages where this tradition of pysankas were dying. So here, old women, they were taking money. So on average, they were taking 3 rubles for 1 or 2 pysankas, which were like kind of, you know, it was kind of a money, as we can say. Some other villages, they were even taking 10 rubles for 1 pysanka, so it was already, that was a lot. That was already a lot. But, you know, this price can be understood because you were basically coming to a person, like the last living person that know this tradition, and you might be actually, you know, like the last person that would ever get this pysanka from this craftswoman. For the number of pysankas that were in one family, obviously it's very hard to tell like the right number now, but on average, every family was creating 20-30 pysankas. The number of the pysankas was depended on how many young girls there is in the household or in the village overall. So if there were like a lot of them, the number actually got up to like 60 or even 60 plus pieces, so 60 plus pysankas. So it's like a lot, you know. If there were not like no young women, for example, no young girls at all, or it was just like one girl, then the number obviously decreased. drastically, and then this family on average they had like up to 10 pysankas, but well, the average number was actually like 5-6 pysankas, so they, you know, that they would have at least something to bring to church, because we're going to church with this pysankas and with paskas. Pascha is like this traditional Easter sugary bread. So yeah, so this was in a basket, and we're going to the church with that. As the rule, so again, the girls worked pretty differently in different regions. So as I said, in Kharkiv region, for example, mostly it was old women who worked on pysankas, and they were working on their own, without any help, without anyone in the house. And in most of the region, young girls worked also like that. So they were working on their own, in their own houses, so you know, so no one will distract them, no one will put some negative energy and stuff like that, so they're working on their own. However, in other regions there were traditions that these girls, they were meeting up in like, I don't know, in the evening, for example, like 2-3, like up to 5 people, and they were just, you know, making fun of all of this, and they were working and chatting and whatever, having the girls' night, as we can say, and doing a very needed work. So about material, how all of this was created, and what is all of this about. So all of this is painted with wax. So they were taking one large and one smaller pot. In the larger pot, they were putting coal, so you know, so it will be hot, and in the smaller they were putting wax, and then they were putting like the smaller on the top of the larger one, and these wax were like melting. Then they were taking another pot, they were pouring water in there, and they were like dissolving paint in this water. The drawing performed with a certain device, so it wasn't done by a paintbrush or something. It was, I will show you, because I will not be able to describe you this thing. Obviously I will show you that. This device is called kistka or kistka, depending on, again, on dialect, on region. There are also other names as kulka, as didik, and migulka or migulka, also depending on. So when everything like was prepared, girls started to work, and as far as we know, they didn't have any, you know, like rituals performed before that. They might, you know, just started just with the words like oh, God help me to work, or something like this, you know, basically like a lot of us are still saying this when we're starting some new stuff, just like, oh my God, help me to do that. And well, the process of work. So you were taking the first act, you were taking this kistka, this device, as we can say, you were like dipping it into the wax, and you were creating an ornament that you wanted, that you liked, whatever. At this point, like, the egg is white, and this ornament will be white. We were waiting for the wax to harden. Then this egg was put in the yellow paint for like different period of time. We know, for example, that in some regions, I'll tell you, like, for example, also in the Western regions, girls kept eggs in water during 2 or 3 prayers. So they were reading like Our Father prayer 2-3 times, and then they were taking this egg out, so in a yellow one. After that, when the egg was took from yellow paint, they were again taking this kistka, painting another part of the ornament with wax. Again, the wax hardened, they were putting it in red paint. In more old time, ancient time, that was the end of the process. So the egg was white, yellow, and red. But with time, it's like end of 19th century also, maybe even earlier, it became very popular and like fashionable. So we can say for the eggs to be black, actually. So the process continued. After the red one, they were again putting another layer of wax. So they were adding another ornamentation, and then they were putting this in black paint. After that, they were taking it out of the black paint, and they already had some boiled water or very hot water. They were putting it in the hot water so the wax will melt, and not for a very long period of time. It just like wax melted, and they were taking it out. That's why a lot of eggs actually at the end of the day were raw inside. Then they were polishing them with lard or some oil, you know, so the paint sparkled nicely. And it is, I think, logical. I don't need to explain that this was a very strict process, so you needed to follow it strictly like that. Because if you will start with black paint, obviously you will not be able to paint your egg into yellow, for example, right? So at the end of the day, you had this black egg with white, red, and yellow ornamentation. There were also other type of eggs which were just in one color, and that were created, and this ornament was on the plain white background. So how it was made? The technology was completely different. So they were also they were taking PYSANKAS, so they painted these eggs mostly in red, and then they were taking this kistka with the wax. They were doing the ornamentation in reverse, because then they were putting it in a cabbage kvass. I don't know how to explain you what kvass is, to be honest. It's some kind of like drink, but well, they were putting it there, and this kvass was eating all of the paint, red paint. Then they were taking this out. They were putting this again in a hot water. The wax was melting, and you had a white egg with red ornamentation. However, as far as I read, that there was this type of procedure, this type of eggs were used a little bit lesser than the traditional PYSANKAS, like black PYSANKAS. And it may seem that it is fairly fast process, you know, that you can sit down and in one evening you can make like some PYSANKAS. However, no. In general, like this process took 3-4 days to make, because each paint, for example, it was mixed on different days. Many vessels with different paints were not used at once also, and maybe, you know, it was simply because, well, the simple peasants, they did not really had a lot of dishes, and each and every paint, it needed to be like done in a new pot, a clean pot, obviously. And the other thing is also, well, there's a peasant, you know, we are like working on the ground, and we have a household and animals and everything, you know, to take a lot of things to take care of. So obviously we didn't really have a lot of time, and like we, as if though I was there, they didn't had a lot of time. And thus, you know, maybe they were doing this in just their free time, and it took this much time for them. Regarding the color, as I mentioned, that red, yellow, and black, that was the main colors, like a part of white, because the egg was white. Occasionally, in some regions, you could actually meet also green, bronze, and blue one. PYSANKAS, so this just painted eggs, they were as a rule painted mostly in biggest part of regions in red or this reddish bronze color. And a part of this already named color, the other colors they were not used, or at least we don't have any records of it. So obviously maybe in some, you know, the families again very locally, they had maybe some other colors done to their PYSANKAS or KRAINIAN, but overall the tradition was is that there was red, yellow, red, yellow, black, occasionally blue, green, and bronze. About the pigments, also about this paint, that some paints were bought in stores, some were created at home. So for example, in western regions, red, black, and blue paint, they were mostly buying in stores. In Kuban region, for example, they were extracting blue and black from like one of the plant. I'm sorry, I will not name it because I haven't found the translation, so, and I even haven't found the picture of this plant, so I have no idea what this plant is. It plant what this plant is, but apparently they were extracting this blue color, or this very vivid bright blue color. But if you would put this like egg for a longer period of time, it could actually become a black one. Yellow, green, and bronze ones, they were the paints that were commonly like extracted at home. In western regions, for example, wood sorrel was soaked in warm or hot water, and then, you know, it was given this yellow paint, yellow color. So some craftswomen, they were actually, they were drying this plant, then they were pounding it, and only after that they were brewing this paint. In different regions, extraction technology usually differs because, you know, they were using different type of plants. So apple bark and elderflowers were also used for yellow color. Most often, even to this day, we are using actually onion shells. So my grandma, she's always a smart, like as long as I can remember, she was always using the eggshells. No, eggshells, I'm sorry, the onion shells. So yes, you're just putting this in a hot water, and you just boiling it till the water became this bronzish, like brown red color. And then you just put krashenkas in there, and like eggs, and you create krashenkas. Color saturation obviously can be adjusted also, because I mean, if you want it, if you want a less saturated color, then you need to put these eggs for less time to be in the water. If you want the color to be more saturated, like accordingly, you put these eggs in for longer there. Green color was obtained from some blueberries, wild elderberries. All this was then ground together with some yellow paint, and it was it was made into this porridge like consistency. So that was mainly in Podillia they were doing that. Also they were using some pussy willow, so it's we call it in Ukraine kotiki. So kotiki is like this very cute name for cat. And we call it because it literally looks like little cats, this little fluffy cats, so we call it kotiki. So it was made from this, also mainly also in Podillia. In Poland, for example, for green, they used ray leaves. In Kharkiv region also, they were using different various plants, and they had the same processes in Podillia, so they were mixing this paint from these plants, I don't know what plants, but some plants, with already yellow pigments, and then this is how they were extracting the green one. And well, like a lot of different plants. It was like bean leaves, like periwinkles, so some other stuff, and I mean, if I will say to you something, that's good, because it's not, it's not saying to me anything. About also the period when it was painted. So it is, at first glance, it may seem that everything is very clear, in terms of periodization, that, they painted it before Easter. However, no. In different communities, it was a different period of time. So, as I already, mentioned, that was a pretty long period of time that took at least like 3-4 days in the making, because again, young girls had their own household duties to make, so they could not just sit and paint them all day long. Therefore, the period of creating pysankas was quite long. Mostly it began in the second half of Great Lent. Yeah, so this is a period of 6 weeks. So they began the painting pysankas in the second half of these 6 weeks. About days, I think it's clear for all of you. Easter is it's a holiday that doesn't has a permanent date, so obviously I will not be able to tell you the direct date when everyone was starting. In some localities, pysankas begins to be made on Palm Sunday. So in Ukraine we also call it a Flower Sunday, and Palm Sunday is a Easter. No, I'm sorry, it is a Sunday before Easter. This when Catholicism had Easter, we had Palm Sunday, and in this holy week it begins with this Palm Sunday. In some areas they start making pysankas on Monday, Thursday, thus it was yesterday. So this is like literally a few days before Easter. It's like on this day that most of the regions they start to do pysankas. And it wasn't a coincidence, because it was believed that if you will start to paint these pysankas and do krashenkas, it's believed that those eggs will not spoil for the next 12 or more days. In Ukraine, I will, also distract a little bit, because I think it will be interesting for you. So we have like this about Monday, Thursday. So I saw that you have like this, like in, I don't know why you, because I mean, that's not just the Catholics just watching these videos. Overall, I see that in Catholicism, they have this tradition of like washing feet on this Monday, Thursday. But like we don't have this type of things here in Ukraine. This is just basically a day when we clean up in the houses, This is also the day that we start to if those who make pysankas and krashenkas, they are doing it on Monday, Thursday, and also we are baking Pascha. So again, this sweet bread, as I said, we are putting the whole house in order before Easter week. There is also now I don't know whether it is preserved or not. Maybe in some villages it is preserved, but mostly back then, like in end of the 19th century, beginning of 20th century, we had also this tradition of so people were going to the church, they were going to the service, and they were on the service they were standing with candles, and after the service was ending they were going home with this same candle, and when they were coming to their house they were, you know, like how does it, you call this thing, I don't know what is this, like basically draw a cross near the door so that the evil will pass their house. I think is, you know, if some of you are familiar with Bible, you would make this correlation with this subject when Jesus, not Jesus, I'm sorry, when God, Yahweh, said that you need to put the cross on your door with blood of a ram or something like that. So when the angels were come, it was in Egypt, when the Jews were in Egypt, so that the angels will see that, oh, this is Jews, and they don't need to touch them. They were killing everyone else. So I think you can see the correlation with that. Monday Thursday also is called like this because it is the day of spring cleaning. So before sunset, houses and storerooms were traditionally cleaned, yards were swept, you know, all of the branches or the leaves, it was burned down, so, you know, to cleanse the earth of winter, frost, death, and all uncleanness. According to belief, dirty water after the cleaning should not be poured inside of the house because this negative energy of such water can negatively affect future life in this house. Therefore, it was better to pour it somewhere on concrete, you know, on the roads, or basically somewhere where nothing is growing. In order about a house also, so people who were sick or had some problems, they were bathing long before dawn, and they were then pouring this water, this dirty water, on the crossroad, and they were asking God and saying, God, that God give health to the arms, to the legs, and also a little to the stomach. Mothers also, they were bathing their children in this on Monday, Thursday, they will place in some willow in the water, and it was believed that this type of water, it will prevent from sickness, it will heal some wounds and everything like that. On this Thursday also, mostly children had their haircut done because it was believed, you know, to, you know, so that the hair will not fall out and the head will not hurt. And also in this day, so yesterday, it's in Kyiv region, in Podillia, and on Lівобережжя. Monday, Thursday is called Навський Великдень, so Навський Easter. There's no like direct translation, so other name is also Мавський Великдень, Мертвецький Великдень, so Мертвецький, it's like that Easter. So according to an ancient folk belief, God released the dead from the afterlife, from the other world 3 days, for 3 times a year. So the first one was on this Monday, Thursday, the second time when the rye flowers bloom, and the third one on the day of Spas. So Spas is also another of our local, like, Slavic holiday. In English, I found that it's translated the Apple Feast of the Savior, or Apple Spas. Sometimes the Feast of the Savior on the Hill. Again, it is an Eastern Slavic folk name and folk feast. It's the Feast of the Transfiguration, and it occurs in August, on 19th of August. But let's go back to our topic. So this is just, you know, some interesting tradition that we have had on Monday, Thursday here in Ukraine. Getting back to the topic, we got in the end when these PYSANKAS were painted. So everyone also finished them on different period of time. Some completed it on Sunday before Easter, others were painting them even on Easter, and that was done in order, so, you know, so they would have fresh PYSANKAS on Thomas Sunday. So Thomas Sunday is Sunday after Easter, and it is named like this because on that service they are reading this the subject of doubting of Thomas, when he did not believe to Jesus, and all things. They are reading this passage of Bible, and most of the territories after this Sunday, so the next Sunday after official Easter, we're done with doing pysankas and krashenkas, that's all. However, even here, again, there is some exceptions. For example, in some villages in Lviv region, pysankas and krashenkas, they're continuing to be produced until the resurrection of Jesus, that is 30 days after Easter. Individual families can also do it until Green Week. Again, this is another Slavic holiday of pagan origin, which covers several days before the how it is called, Pentecost. That is, it is somewhere at the end of the spring, at the beginning of summer. On these days, so we honor the dead. We honor also plants, vegetation for good harvest. So pysankas are also made for the rites of honoring the dead. And let's talk about also what meaning was behind all of that and what meaning was put into pysankas and krashenkas. They were used obviously in different rites and different religious purposes. So pysankas, they were sanctified, they were hung on icon corner. Icon corner is such a thing is in our part of the world where we have a lot of icons. So basically it's it is a part of home in Eastern Orthodox, in Greek Catholics, and in Roman Catholic Christians. So they were put in this pysankas for the sake of decoration. There were no deep meaning into that. It was just for pure decoration, that's all. However, this practice was mostly common for Volyn, for Kuban, and occasionally also in Kharkiv region. Sometimes such pysankas also, interestingly, they were emptied from the egg from inside, and in these holes that were made to empty the egg, they were put in some wings, some tail. From the dough they were making some head, and it was needed to be some kind of pigeons, something like that. But also here about hanging these pysankas in the house, it was also different in different regions. So because, for example, there is one village, Turinci, in Zhorkiv district, it's Lviv region, western region. They were not doing that because in this village they believe that if they will do this, the whole livestock would die. I don't know, it's very interesting for me, to be honest, why they believe in that and what happened so they started to believe in that. But in some local areas there was thing the beliefs like that. Nowadays pysankas and krashenkas are of course most closely associated with church rites. They are brought to the church to be sanctified. In some of the regions we're giving it to priests. We are exchanging them among ourselves in the parishioners are exchanging it among themselves, and etc. However, it was not always attributed, not always was just a church attribute, so to speak. There is a very interesting place of pysankas in the relationship between young boys and young girls. So apparently in some of the regions they had this tradition of when even young boys and girls were gathering together, the girls needed to take a pysanka in her arm, and the boys needed to snatch this pysanka. And obviously, they were doing this for the girls that they liked, and if girls liked the boys back, they were not very how do you call it? They were not resistant much, obviously. So they were exchanging these pysankas, and the boys then they were preserving these pysankas and everything. So very interestingly, sometimes even it was if girl really liked boy, she could go to the boy and she could present it him, but somewhere in private. So no one will see that, not in public, and she would go to him and she would present him directly her pysanka, and as I said, not in private, because it was not appropriate to do this in public. This was done because in some of the places, some of the regions, it is believed that pysankas has the power to cause or to straighten love. However, in different countries, for example in Czech Republic, Czechs, they believe that when they were exchanging with these pysankas, pysanka, or also krashenka, so I don't know what it's correctly for Czech Republic, basically when they were exchanging these eggs, it was believed that they were just cementing their friendship. So there was more a friendship jest rather than a love one. We have another very interesting costume, and a very I think funny one, and exactly spring should be. So it is mostly popular in Kyiv region and in Galicia, Галичина, so Western region. So on the second day of Easter, boys are going around the villages, going to the houses, especially the houses where there is a young girls. And if they're coming to the house and the girl is still sleeping, or if she might not be sleeping already, but she is not dressed still, they are like pouring some water on her. That's why girls prior to that try to give boys pysankas. So those girls who were able to give to the boys pysankas, they were safe from this situations, as we can say. And it's actually a pretty old tradition, because so we have a very important for our Ukrainian history work of one of a French architect. He was an architect, an engineer, like military engineer, Beauplan. So in 1650, he wrote a book describing Ukraine. So he was traveling on our territories, he was building also some stuff here, and he wrote about this right, actually, but he wrote it a bit differently. So he wrote that the boys were going around the village, they were hunting for girls. If they would find this young lady, they were taking her to a well, and they were like pouring water on her 5 or 6 times. However, this fun was allowed just until noon. And the next day, it was the day when the girls were able to do that. That was the day when the girls were able to take revenge on themselves. Oh, sorry. I will also add about that the girls were also safe. So when the boys were coming to the house, the girls obviously, like, they knew these traditions, and most of them tried to to wake up earlier, and they were like waiting for the boys to come, and they were trying to put this pysankas in their buckets or something as fast as possible, because if they were able to put that meant that they were safe. That's all. Boys needed to stop. So also interesting. But getting back to this, so they were like going around, yeah. And the girls girls were like hiding in someone's house of this like or young boy, with some mugs, also with water and everything. And when like one would be standing and waiting and making signals that the boy's coming for the girls to prepare. And when the boy was coming, the girls started to scream, to yell, to run, and they would start to pour this water on this boy, and they were like making their revenge basically. So I think it's actually very fun and very interesting stuff, especially for young people, and especially again, it's such a spring vibe, right? As we can say, it's like springy situation. But overall, we would talk why that was done. It is believed that it was some kind of fertility rite. So it was done to like for fertility, for straight, for health. And it was that eggs, it was like it is the symbol of the sun, and water, it's like symbol of a rain, obviously. In general, so this pysankas mostly was seen as some decorations, as some toys. They were kept somewhere on the shelf also. When neighbors were visiting each other on these days, they were obviously bringing some pysankas with them, and they were exchanging these pysankas with their neighbors. In Kyiv region and in Podillia region, it was popular for kids to go from house to house and maybe read some poems or something like that, just for you to understand. And if the hostess of the house was very pleased with kids, she was giving them eggs. If not, she was giving them a piece of paska, again this sweet bread. In addition, pysankas was given some supernatural and even some superstitious qualities sometimes. So, for example, pysankas were placed in water, so like at the evening before going to church. So, and when in the morning this these people were woke up, they would wash themselves with the water where this pysanka was placed, because it was believed, that your skin will be better, and you would look like this rounded egg and everything, and you would look healthier and stuff like that. It was popular mostly in Western region, but also in Kharkiv region it was very popular. And it was believed also that pysankas has an effect on men's health, and they protect them from weakness. In some villages, they believe that the pysankas was protecting from plague, actually. Also in some regions, if a person was ill for a long period of time, they were held in, they were like putting these pysankas on his neck, on his head, or they were just putting some eggshell from this pysanka on his neck again, and it was doing something. They believed also that pysanka felt not just health, but it was also important for harvest. So in one village, pysankas were beaten after the holidays, and the shells was then thrown in the garden for better harvest. In others, they were taking the whole pysanka and they were just burying it under the ground, and then they were digging it up again when they needed to go to harvest and to work on the ground, and so they were digging it up and taking it with them. There was also a tradition of rolling the earth with pysankas in the places where the soil was very bad and not fertile. So it's basically like you're taking the neck and you were like rolling the ground. There are also interesting local traditions. So, for example, in the village of Pristan, Lviv region again, pysankas were kept in the house as a talisman against thunder. In other village, Ostrov, also this region, shells were thrown on the tachi. It's a symbol of protecting their house against fire, and etc. etc. Pysanka also was believed to be a very important stuff against the evil eye or damage for their livestock, or even sometimes from witchcraft. In Volyn, they were making, after the holidays were ended, they were making some little mugs, from this pysankas, some jugs, glasses, some small vases out of this also. And pysanka also was placed on graves, especially for children, so these children were able to play with something in afterlife. Sometimes they were just coming to some graveyards and they were putting it to some very maybe old burials that maybe some relatives already died and there's no one to look after that, so they were putting this pysankas. Sometimes they were burying them down also in these graves, just some to ease maybe the spirits or something. So yeah, so overall this pysankas, they were like the best ones after everything ended, the festives and all of these holidays ended. They were preserved, they were put in a chest, so they would be able to take them and look at them and all use them on the next Easter. And also about krashenkas. So that was all of this I was saying. It was about pysankas. So it is with ornamentation, very like this hard one. Krashenkas, just the painted one, they did not have such a high, so you can say, status of pysanka. And it was like understandable. There was just a painted egg, so it was nothing there, right? They were mostly given to children to play with these eggs, to fight with these eggs, and also they were commonly given to grandpas and to shepherds. And in general, so with krashenkas, I'm sorry, we have this very interesting tradition here in Ukraine. I mean, I suppose also in other countries that also have this tradition of pysanka and krashenka, but obviously we'll talk about Ukraine. So we have such a game that we're playing. It's called tsokanka in Western region, but most of the region call it navbitki. Basically, what is this? So you're gathering. Well, I will tell you how. I will tell you just overall. So it is like people like you with, I don't know, your friend. You're taking both one egg, one krashenka, not pysanka, and so you're choosing which side you want. The bottom side, the upper side. And you're taking these eggs and you're starting to crack this egg on each other, and those who will crack the shell of one another egg will win, and they will take this egg. So we, for example, in our family, when we had, like years ago when we were celebrating all of this together, we would sit down, all of us. My grandma was making a lot of krashenkas with onions, was this painted in onions. No, you understood what I mentioned about onion shells. And everyone, would choose the krashenka, and everyone was very serious about this, of choosing the best one, looking at the best one. Yeah, and we were just sitting around around the table with this krashenkas, and everyone was going together and bumping into the eggs. And no, we were not getting anything at the end of the day, but it was, it's very funny. It's a very like very cute tradition that really brings a lot of happiness and a lot of joy when we are doing that, because everyone, you know, everyone's laughing, everyone is like, why am I getting emotional right now? I will not cry, I promise, but yeah, so it just, you see, it's a very, like, it's a very warm tradition, so wow. I'm sorry, this is something else, okay. And however, I found when I was like preparing this, I found that there is actually like in Kuban region, there is, and in Kharkiv region, there is another thing very interesting, which is called Navkotka or Navkotka. I'm sorry about stress, I'm not sure about this. Well, basically is you are like rolling the egg. So two people were standing somewhere, they were rolling these eggs, and which egg would, like, you know, bump into one another and again damage the other egg, then this person won. Very interesting also, it was mentioned that children was very cunning in this game, and they were not playing fairly all the time, because sometimes they were preparing for this day like few days before, and sometimes they were, you know, poking the egg for all of the insides to get out. They were then putting in this little like whole wax into this egg, and obviously it became very hard, it became pretty like strong, and then they were playing with this and playing like that. And yes, sometimes when I saw the information that they were like making this eggs from dough, so they were making the like egg-shaped dough, and then they were painting it in red to imitate PYSANKAS, but I'm not sure how this worked, to be honest, because the dough, you know, it's not getting so hard as, well, I don't know, but it was said that they were doing also like that. We will end with ornamentation, obviously. So I will not go in a very big detail, because, you know, we can talk with another video, and plus, you know, you will not understand it still. It's very hard to listen when someone's describing technically all of these ornaments, how it's done and all of this. It's way easier to look at this, so I will just mention you some of the ornamentation with examples, so with illustrations. So this is, listen carefully, look carefully how all this looks like, how we call it. And so there is obviously three main groups, so as usual as everywhere. The first one is geometric ornamentation, plant ornamentation, and animalistic ornamentation, animal ornamentation. So some researchers, they are also distinguishing such ornaments as solar ornament, object household ornaments, and religious ornaments. But to be honest, at the end of the day, they can be placed in, like, I don't know, in this geometrical ornaments, and already in these three groups that I mentioned. Without going into details, I will show you different types of ornaments with examples. All this type of ornaments, you know, they were not invented by Slavic people, by Eastern Europeans, by us Ukrainians specifically. Those are very old, very ancient type of ornaments, you know, that you can see starting from, like, I don't know, Stone Age, Bronze Age, on Greek vases, and etc. So very common, popular throughout the world, but just, you know, interpreted in our own tradition. So we will start with this geometric one. So also I will name just, you know, like just some of them, because there's like dozens of these geometric ornaments. So I will just maybe some distinctive one, or, you know, the ones that you will be able to understand more. So the first one is the dots one. That's great, it was dots. Thread one, the grid, corners, windmill, in the form of ladders. The other is with horns, that is a spiral line, and different such spirals have different names. This type of spirals is called rishke. This type of spiral is called krutske або закрутske. This type of ornament is called sikach. This is what I'm saying. A lot of ornaments, a lot of names, so I will not, you know, like put it on you, so you don't really need it. Also, obviously, the most popular is the cross shape, cross ornament. circle ornament, and etc, etc. As I said, there is a lot more. There's like more like dozen, if not even more, of these geometrical ornaments. About plant ornament, there's like not a lot. So the most popular one is it's called roja. So there's no translation to that. It's just like roja. This is one of the most so it's one of the most popular ornamentation actually in Volyn PYSANKAS. So this is a stylized flower that is made in the shape of a star. Mostly it has 8 leaves, less often 6 leaves, and they were usually painted red, less often yellow, white, or black. The second one is spruce trees, the most widespread ornament on Volyn PYSANKAS, also a very ancient ornament. Apples also, but from the name you wouldn't guess that this ornament should look like. Just it is overall a plant ornament. It is simply a linear ornament with twisted ends, similar to geometric ornament of horns and or terns. I have no idea why it's called apple. Maybe because, you know, it looks like some branch and it has this like little, I don't know why it's called apples, but well, it's called apples. The fourth one is grapes, in forms of grapes, and even in regions where we don't have grapes, they don't grow up there, we can find PYSANKAS with grapes, because in church paintings and church art there's a lot of grape there. Trees also was, but it was more rare ornamentation. Periwinkle also used. Also important to understand that there is no question of naturalism in this plant ornament, so they were not trying to show it as naturally as possible. There was mostly some stylized things. And the last one for today is the animal ornament. So the first one is the ornament in the form of ram's horns, chicken feet, goose or duck feet, butterflies, but here also we need to mention that it was not so they were showing butterflies, but sometimes it was not specifically for butterflies, it just, you know, was the name for overall some insects. Spiders also. Again, the drawing was very stylized. It was not that they were drawing spiders, it was just, you know, there was a pretty geometrical ornament, but because it looked like spiders, they called it spiders, and it's considered to be animal ornamentation. Also, they were using white storks, sparrows, ducks. Interesting, also centipedes, really like this one. Yeah, and also crayfish. And this ornament is actually quite common, and also I adore this one. When I saw this one, it's so cute. So this is like mainly the ornaments that were used, without again getting into very, very big details. So yeah, so this is everything that I have for today. Hope it was interesting for you. Hope you found out something new for yourself. And as you saw, I was very touched to share with our tradition with you and remember these traditions also. So yeah, so I hope and like I wish you all the best. Good evening, good morning, good night, wherever, whenever you are, and hope to see you in the next videos. Bye bye.